functions are. Let's talk about the graphs of functions. Right? A lot of times we want to graph functions so that we get a visual picture of how these functions behave as we input certain values. All right, so when we graph a function, the x values represent the input values. Right? And the y values represent the output values. Okay? So when we graph the inputs, that's the x values, and the output, that's usually represented by the y values. All right, so let's take a look at this example. All right, the graph below shows the graph of f of x and the graph of g of x. F of x is a function that shows the amount of money in Frank's bank account. In this case, the input is time in months, and the output is going to be Frank's account balance. G of x is a function that shows the amount of money in Greg's bank account. The input is time in months, and the output is Greg's account balance. All right, so here's our x-axis. Right, this is time in months, and our y-axis represents the account balance. And notice that it says this is in hundreds of dollars, right? So this would mean $0, $100, $200, $300, $400, $500, $600, etc. Okay, and I want you to notice that I have two things that are graphed, two functions that are graphed. This is the graph of f of x, right, which represented the amount of money in Frank's bank account. And then g of x, that's this one. Right? That's the graph of the amount of money in Greg's bank account. Okay? All right, so let's look at the first question. It says, what is f of 3? Right? And what does our answer mean? Okay? So let's think about this. Right? When we ask for f of 3, what are we asking for? We're asking for what is the output value going to be when the input is 3. Right? So we know our input value is 3, or in this case, 3 months. So let's think about that. What's happening to Frank's bank account at the 3-month mark? Right? Well, here's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. At 3 months, Frank's bank account does this. It goes down and then up, right here. Right? This is the point, what is that? 3 months, comma, 100, 200, 300, 400, $500. Right? So when the input is 3, the output is 500. Okay, because it goes through this point, 3, 500. So what does this mean? This is saying when the input is 3 months, well, the output is how much money he has. That's $500. Right? So we could say when x is 3, or let's say it this way, after 3 months, Frank has $500. Right? That's what this means, right? When our x value or our time is 3 months, well, then the output is 500. After 3 months, Frank has $500. All right, you go ahead and do this one. Pause, please, and figure out what f of 5 is. Here's what you should have. F of 5 is equal to 300. Right? Because after 5 months, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, right here, this point is 5, 300. Right? 100, 200, 300. Right? Right? 5 outputs 3. That means after 5 months, Frank has $300. Right? And I want you guys to see how powerful this notation is. Right? Because imagine I ask the question, how much money does Frank have? Right? If I were to ask the question, how much money does Frank have? How would you answer that? Right? And the answer is, we really can't tell unless I say a time. Right? The amount of money that Frank has depends on the time we're talking about. Right? You can't just ask that question, how much money does Frank have? Right? You have to ask the question, if you're talking about this graph, you have to give me a time. Right? So you'd say, at 3 months, how much money did Frank have? Or at 5 months, how much money did Frank have? Right, so this notation is really powerful because it doesn't just say Frank has $300. It says there's a link between the time and how much money he has. Right, the link is that at 5 months he had $300. Right, so it's really important to show that relationship between the time and the amount of money he has. All right, 3. what is g of 5? Right? Remember, g of x is the function for Greg's money. Right? So what's the output when the input is 5 for Greg? Greg's function. Well, Greg's function, g of x, is this one. What's happening at 5 months? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? Well, at 5 months, the g function has a y value of 500 right here. So g of 5 is equal to 500. Right? And again, what does this mean? Right? This doesn't just say Greg has $500. This says at 5 months or after 5 months, Greg has $500. This shows the link between the input and the output, the link between the time and the money. All right, go ahead and do 4 and 5. Pause and answer those. See what you got. F of 6. F of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. F of 6 should be $200. Okay? Oh, actually, I did that wrong. Sorry about that. That's G of 6. G of 6 is 200. Sorry, I did this wrong. F of 6, what is that? F of 6 is 0. Sorry about that. I'm looking at the wrong graph. Okay, so the f function, f of x, is this one. And then after 6 months, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it goes down to 0. Okay, so this is showing us that at 6 months, Frank's bank account is down to 0. Okay, for Greg, his function goes like this. At 6 months, he has $200. So the input of 6, output of 200. All right, last 2 questions here. For what values of x is f of x equal to 400? Right, so we're talking about the f function, f of x. Right, for what values of x is the output going to be 400? Right, remember, this is our output. Right, so let's think about that. Let's look at our graph. What values of x are going to give us an output of 400? Well, let's see, where's 400? 100, 200, 300, 400 is here. Right, so for our f function, when is the output 400? Well, right here I see that at 2 months he has $400. But then there's also another time, right? His money goes up and then comes back down. At 4 months he also has $400. Right? So for what values of x is f of x equal to 400? Or in other words, what input values is going to give us an output of 400? Well, there's 2. Right? X could either be 2 or x could be 4. Right? Those are the 2 values of x, 2 or 4. Right? Those both have an output value of 400. Okay? Go ahead and do the last one. For what values of x is g of x equal to 300? Right? And notice it's g of x. Pause and answer that. All right, when is g of x going to be 300? Right? Well, let's see. 100, 200, 300. I'm looking at this point, and also this point. Okay? So what x values are going to give us an output of 300? That's 4. This one is 4, 5, maybe 5.7, 6, 7, and 8. All right, so, oops, sorry, you can't see that. So in this case, there's 3 x values that have an output of 300, right? When x is 4, the output for the g function is 300. Also about 5.7, and then the value of 8. When the x value is 8 here, you have a y value or an output value of 300.